Game developers often put their budget into questionable things, from pointless collectibles scattered across massive maps to cosmetic DLCs that completely ruin immersion. It makes you wonder why they don't invest the time and money into improving the base game for everyone, whatever through better performance or major quality of life features like localization. Thankfully, some publishers behind recent great games have started taking localization seriously. We can even see strong, passionate communities stepping up to bring their native languages to these games themselves. Some people might be surprised that players care this much, especially when localization usually just means changing the UI and subtitles, since a full native voiceover is a luxury only a few studios can afford. But in reality, just having those translated subtitles opens the door for countless people to enjoy some of the best games ever made. There is this widespread assumption that everyone can understand games in English, just because they can follow a movie or because they played a game that requires basic English, like Counter-Strike, Dota, or League of Legends. And while that may be true for competitive games, there is a huge gap in the vocabulary required when you jump into incredibly massive RPGs like The Witcher, Baldur's Gate, or Rogue Trader. Without a strong grasp of the language, you lose the ability to truly immerse yourself in these artistic and crafted worlds. Take my home country, the Czech Republic and Eastern Europe in general, we can say. Because of our recent history, access to learning English was limited for a long time. Sure, most Eastern European countries rank high in English proficiency today, but we still have a lot of people who simply don't click with the language perfectly. For them, the only way to fully enjoy a masterpiece like The Witcher or Cyberpunk is to play it in their native tongue. Having the game in your native language also opens the door for people to participate in discussion or socials. You don't need high-level English vocabulary to write a review or post on a forum. Because you fully understand the game in your own language, you can construct a simple opinion in English, and the community will understand exactly what you mean. No one is going to judge you for keeping it basic, but playing in your native language can come with some nuances. If you are a Slavic, playing a game like The Witcher with native translation is one of the best experiences you can have. You have that immediate connection to a world that reflects your cultural background. You instantly grasp the themes, the dark tales, the folklore, and the intrigue. It all falls together perfectly. On the flip side, games like Cyberpunk might actually lose a bit of their immersion when translated into Czech, even if it's just the subtitles. I love playing games in my native language, but I find it hard to get into the world of Cyberpunk, for instance in Czech. Translation always comes down to context, and not every language is perfectly suited for every setting. Cyberpunk is heavily rooted in an American setting with very specific region-crafted slang. Trying to force that slang into Czech can sometimes feel awkward, but that is just my personal taste. Generally speaking, it's just great that the options exist so people can customize their journey however they want. You can say a similar thing about The Outer Worlds. It is a game that satirizes Western capitalism and bureaucracy. Themes that actually resonate deeply with Czechs. We grew up with the Franz Kafka stories or the classic novel like Dobrý voják Švejk, which are all about making a joke out of the absurd authority figures. But it is incredibly difficult to translate iconic lines like the Spacer's Choice slogan into different languages, because they rely on a very specific rhythm and tone. There will always be limits to translation, but in the end, it's much better to accept those limits and give more people the opportunity to dive into these stories. Interestingly, The Witcher might actually offer a more mysterious experience to an English-speaking player than to a Slavic one. Creatures like the Noonwraith, the Labrican, and the Leshy. Or characters like Hunter or Deem are deeply tied to literature and stories that most of us are already used to, and playing The Witcher with Czech subtitles feels perfectly natural and great for immersion. You can even step up the immersion for yourself by playing some of the most iconic Slavic games in their native voiceover, like The Witcher in Polish or Kingdom Come Deliverance in Czech. For me, playing Kingdom Come in Czech is genuinely heartwarming. It delivers this massive wave of immersion with local jokes and a vibe that makes me feel like I am truly walking through historical Bohemia. And for non-native players, playing with Czech audio and English subtitles can be a fantastic way to experience how the language sounds and immerse themselves in a different culture.
Pozor! Skáču! Do psí díry urousaný! Moje noha! Sakra!
Up until now, we just explored RPGs, but what about strategy games? One of my absolute favorites is Total War Warhammer 3. I can fully enjoy the excellent Czech UI, complete with localized jokes and immersive description of the endgame scenarios, while still keeping the English voiceover, because let's be honest, I always need to hear Karl Franz summoning his electrocounts or that the nation calls. Having the option to play a strategy game in your own language is an incredible advantage. You already have to use so much brainpower to strategize, position units and manage cities. Reading what a specific technology does or how a building helps you is just so much faster in your native tongue. When you read in English as a second language, there is always that slight mental delay to translate and process the information. But in Warhammer, the mechanics are explained so well in Czech, for me, that this hurdle completely disappears. Because I don't have to fight the language barrier, nothing stops me from sinking massive amounts of time into it. I happily fall right into that just one more turn vibe. I blink, I realize it's 3 in the morning, and find myself staring at my United Empire, suddenly wondering if I forgot to do my real life chores. During all those hours, I never feel like I am losing touch with the game, by not using the English overlay. From the quest descriptions to the items and the building jokes, everything is done so well. I don't need English to perform well, understand the mechanics, or even help other people play better. It removes an extra layer of effort, allowing me to purely focus on the gameplay, and actually relax. Well, as much as you can relax while defending against the forces of chaos from the north, and the greenskins and Skavens from the south. But all of this, the great translation, the perfect vibe, comes from people. When you have translators who actually care and understand the context, they create some of the most beautiful pieces of localization. And that is something that simply cannot be replaced by AI. I have noticed a trend recently, where some community members try to translate full games quickly using AI, but it completely loses that engaging immersive vibe. It feels too artificial, and those great localized jokes I just talked about, they completely disappear. And that applies to every single game I have mentioned so far. Good translators have to put a piece of their own cultural soul into the game, so that the target audience can truly connect with it. I am honestly really proud of the Czech translators community. We have dedicated teams providing incredible translations for some of the biggest games out there. Even if I don't always use them myself, it's heartwarming to know that the option is there for the wider Czech community to experience these amazing worlds. What's even better is when developers actively support integrating these fan translations into their games. Larian Studios, for instance, officially implement the community translations for Divinity Original Sin 1 and 2. When I played Divinity Original Sin 2 with a friend, having that Czech UI massively improved the flow of our playthrough. We both instantly knew what was going on and how to progress. We didn't have to stop or backtrack to reread dialogues because we just clearly understood everything. That kind of flow is a huge bonus. When I play a heavily story-driven game like Baldur's Gate 3 with friends, it can be a slightly different story. Even though a community translation exists for it, Larian hasn't officially added it yet, so when playing in English, there were moments where we literally had to pause the game just so I could translate and explain what an NPC had just told us. Because again, this is a much higher level of English than the basic vocabulary you would need to get by in League or Dota. This whole experience made me appreciate translations so much more. Even though I didn't mind explaining the story to my friend, it slowed down our pacing. And let's be honest, my friend could never get the same level of immersion from my quick summaries as they would from reading the actual in-game dialogue themselves. In the end, translation removes the heavy burden of the language barrier. It allows everyone to truly enjoy games the way they like, and most importantly, to share those experiences with others. That encounter in Baldur's Gate 3 with my friend also helped me realize something really important. Before we reach our final destination, there is this weird assumption online where people take knowing English for granted and act like localization isn't important. I have noticed a vocal minority that actually shames others for using localization, treating the use of English like some sort of badge of honor. But honestly, that mindset falls into a massive trap. Consuming English dialogue and item description is an entirely passive activity. It creates this illusion of fluency. Sure, you might be able to understand a live stream, a YouTube video, or an article. But if someone walked up to you on the street, or you actually had to string those words together yourself to form an argument, you would realize that producing a second language is a completely different stage of learning. Unless you are writing a review, joining a forum discussion, or chatting with friends from other countries on Discord, you are only getting half the benefit. Without actually practically using the language you consume during your playtime, you are only partially improving. On the other hand, if a Czech person prefers to play a game in Czech, they are actually improving their native vocabulary. In the end, heavily written games act like a massive interactive books, and just like with the books, they expose us to new words, better grammar, and more colorful phrasing. It goes both ways. If I play a game in English and take that knowledge to write an article or write the script for this very video, this is how I actually improve my English. But to be fair, some games and worlds are incredibly hard to translate, and the localization can sometimes completely lose the original context. If we wanted to, we could actually group games into a tier list based on their language difficulty. At tier 1 we have games like Dota, Counter-Strike and various competitive or lighter strategy titles. On tier 2 we get highly popular RPGs like The Witcher, Cyberpunk or Expedition 33. These games usually offer localization in numerous languages. You can listen to the English voiceover and if you are lucky, turn on your native subtitles, but generally speaking, most of the quest and the overall context in these games are relatively easy to catch on to. And then on tier 3 we have a massive incredibly dense games like Rogue Trader or Pathfinder, Wrath of the Righteous. Now, Owlcat Games write beautiful romances that can really make you question your moral compass. If you know, you know. If you killed for a certain elf just because she's hot, I won't judge. I fell in love with a succubus, so I can't really talk. If you like a girl with a third eye, I completely understand. Me? I am currently into the Dead Cult Assassin, and I firmly believe that I can fix her. These romances are incredibly well written, with such a specific tone and vibe that I honestly can't imagine them working as well in translation. So much of the nonsense would just get lost.
I love you. I always will. Until the end of the last star in the dark void.
Many of these scenes are voice acted, a lot of them aren't. That's just the curse of massively long CRPGs. But the games balance it out with an incredibly engaging combat system. You get the pure thrill of a battle from every encounter, whatever you are purging heretics, mutants, xenos, or even hostile flora. Those moments in a Rogue Trader are just phenomenal. You are hearing all these great voice lines from your companions, the soundtrack is blasting, and it's an amazing combat experience.
As the tenets demand, the shadows will see it as tribute to the undying Emperor.
But then you finish the battle and jump to another system. Suddenly your Voxmaster interrupts to tell you there's a situation on the bridge. In a split second, the game shifts from intense tactical combat to you reading a novel for the next 40 minutes. Personally, I love it. I can easily say my English has improved just from playing Owlcat games. I can play them all day and rarely get tired of reading, even though English is my second language. But for a lot of people, that sudden shift is a massive wall. It can be incredibly hard to get into the setting like Warhammer 40k because it relies on highly advanced archaic English vocabulary mixed with heavy Latin inspired words. That goes for most traditional CRPGs. Playing them is essentially like reading a massive interactive novel where your choices actually matter, which is an incredible journey. But it is a journey that is incredibly difficult to replicate in a different language, because as I mentioned, characters like Kibela or Arauxel are written so beautifully, even as someone whose mother tongue isn't English. Reading through those romances is heartwarming and genuinely moving. You become completely engaged in the text. To perfectly translate that specific magic into another language is a monumental task. When you read the dialogue and the detailed description of what the characters are doing, it sparks your imagination in a way that just watching a cutscene sometimes can't. It pulls you even deeper into the immersion, but I feel like these specific, highly detailed moments are the hardest to translate. If you change the exact wording, you risk losing the soul that the writers poured into these incredible pieces of art. And sometimes that is just the price you pay for experiencing a masterpiece. I would compare it to reading The Lord of the Rings. Reading it in Czech just doesn't give me the same vibe as reading it in original English. It's great that one of the biggest pillars of fantasy is accessible in my language, but it inevitably loses a bit of its original touch. It's exact same situation with the games like Rogue Trader. I know there are community translations out there for Owlcat Games, often made using a mix of AI and human effort. On one hand, it shows how deeply passionate the Czech community is. People truly value these worlds and want to make them accessible to those who aren't proficient in English, and I deeply appreciate that the option is there for the people who need it. But for me personally, it breaks the immersion, and that is exactly why I put Owlcat Games in tier 3. They are written so beautifully that in my opinion, their core value actually decreases when they are translated. The silver lining here is the progression. Thanks to games that are professionally localized, or just easier to jump into, like The Witcher and Cyberpunk, players can use them to actively improve their English. Then if they get hooked, they can slowly climb up the tiers. And they will need that practice, because the jump in reading a volume from a mainstream game, like Baldur's Gate 3, to a hardcore traditional CRPG is massive. It's a big step that people have to prepare for. When you approach the classic CRPG genre, you aren't just going on a visual adventure, you are going to be reading a lot. It's basically a hybrid between a video game and a massive book. Honestly, it reminds me a lot of those old choose your own adventure games books that I used to play. But ultimately, the localization of these traditional RPGs is a massively important aspect of game development. It helps everyone playing them, whatever you are using these games to get better grasp on English, or you are expanding your vocabulary in your native tongue. You are improving yourself just by simply enjoying a story. Learning new words and discovering colorful vocabulary, even in your own language, is a core part of the experience. We live in a vast world where people don't just speak English. Having access to our own languages in gaming shouldn't be a luxury, it's a crucial quality of life feature. When game studios brag about their bloated multi-million-dollar budgets, it really shouldn't be that hard to find the money to hire professional translators. They should be prioritizing that instead of wasting resources on pointless collectibles or cosmetic DLCs that break immersion and that most players will just ignore anyway. Just look at a smaller title like Expedition 33. They won multiple awards and still managed to offer their game in a huge number of languages, even going out of their way to add Czech after their Game Awards victory, and more recently Arabic. This is exactly why I have so much respect for studios like Creative Assembly. They are one of the developers I have known for a long time that consistently tries to localize most of their games. Maybe it's just because that's the strategy genre has a very scattered global player base, so localization directly boosts their sales, but regardless of the reason, it proves a point. Whatever you are a major player like Creative Assembly, or a smaller team like a Sandwall Interactive, it is entirely possible to make your game accessible for everyone. And then you have the studios that take it a massive step further. Warhorse Studios with Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, or CG Projekt Red with Cyberpunk and The Witcher actually provide a fully localized dubbing. Obviously, recording native voiceover is a much more expensive step up, but it shows an incredible level of dedication to bringing these artistic worlds to life for as many people as possible. Ultimately, it shows that these developers actually care about the quality of life for their players, rather than just focusing on the more questionable parts of modern game development. In fact, I know plenty of people who will specifically go out of their way to support a studio just because they provide a native language support, rather than just defaulting to English and shoving in-game shops or cosmetic DLCs packs into the menu. As I pointed out earlier, true localization can be incredible for immersion. Whether you are playing The Witcher in Polish or experiencing a game in your own native tongue, understanding that specific tone and rhythm of the language pulls you that much deeper into the world. Let's just hope that not many games handle immersive language the way Shadow of the Tomb Raider did. I recently played it and really enjoyed it, but when I turn on that specific setting, it creates a generally bizarre experience. You have a Lara Croft, a British archaeologist, speaking perfect English to the locals, and they just respond to her in Spanish or the tribal native language.
What are you doing?
Taning wilik bishin shokik upagmegen kisin ochela.
Awil, chimpolnen.
Sostenahau. Matin wota in walbalti kukulkan. Tanin shokik leochelobo te alinsutul wahkanah lekano. Shevishin yume.
I'm sure he's very proud of you.
Based on this immersion, we are supposed to assume that absolutely everyone in that jungle has a perfect English comprehension, and Lara clearly understands perfect Spanish, but just absolutely refuses to speak it. Overall, I really enjoyed the game, and it's just a tiny nitpick, but I think it paints a perfect funny picture of how complex this entire topic really is. So let's wrap this up. In the end, localization opens the door for so many people to experience the beautiful worlds that I had the privilege to explore and enjoy. Even if in some specific cases it doesn't resonate perfectly with my own immersion, my recent Baldur's Gate 3 playthrough really opened my eyes. I have friends who love gaming and would absolutely adore these worlds, but without translation, they are simply unable to fully immerse themselves and enjoy the journey, often because of a language barrier that they can't even control. Localization truly helps grow gaming communities. You don't need the incredible high-level vocabulary of an Owlcat RPG to jump onto a forum, express how a game made you feel, or discuss broken AI units in Total War Warhammer. You can naturally grasp a new vocabulary just by listening to the English dubbing while reading subtitles in your native language. And that is the main point of all of this. Native language support is a massive quality of life improvement that gets overlooked way too often. Yet it has the power to improve your skills and help you in the real world far beyond the screen. Anyway, thank you for your attention. More content to come, though not guaranteeing similar quality.